Greetings, brothers. Today we're talking about a fourth place GT Blood Angels list that just happened in October 2022. Also got a bonus list at the end, so stick around. Let's talk lists, tactics, and get into it. Okay, as mentioned, we are getting into Cory Burns' fourth place Goonhammer Canada finish. We're going to look at his attachment strategy. We're going to talk strengths and weaknesses. We'll talk about some thoughts on the current meta and why this list did well. And then I've got a bonus list I'm going to share with you at the end of today's video, so make sure you stick around to see that. So this is a battalion detachment, which I prefer to run, and he's running 2 relics, 2 Heroes of the Chapter, and Dante to basically start him on 3 CP, which is pretty decent for a battalion when you've spent 4, right? That's one of the strengths of Dante. This list is going to overload with melee units, so Heroic Bearing is actually going to be really nice to add 3 inches to Dante's rerolls and help you out in any leadership potential situations. We got the Sanguinary Priest getting our units into Assault Doctrine early. We can obviously do 2 units, and we've made him a fighty Sanguinary Priest with the Teeth of Terra. I think this is the right choice. Like, I don't think it's a great idea to try and go Armor Indomitus on the Sanguinary Priest. Often, if I try and take that, he dies anyway, so may as well have him go out with a bit of a bang here by picking Teeth of Terra. For troops, we've done 3 squads of Assault Intercessors, and bear in mind these guys can fight twice for 2 CP. If you do that, that's 52 Chainsaw attacks coming in. So, I mean, it's no small amount of attacks these guys can throw out with a +1 to wound. It's surprising how much damage these guys can do once you get into Assault Doctrine. We've got that Blood Angels Death Company squad we see in so many lists with the 4th Thunderhammers and the jump packs, combined with Chapter Master rerolls, Forlorn Fury, Sanguinary Priest getting them to Assault Doctrine, and even the Ancient giving them +1 to hit. These guys can do a lot of work. You'd be talking like 20 attacks, hitting on 3s, rerolling 1s. You can get like a 26-inch move here in turn 1 because he used Wrath of Baal. I guess that like your 12-inch pre-game move plus your 14-inch jump. So yeah, these guys can be in the enemy deployment zone. They're always going to trade up for the most part, so find a target that you really need to destroy and destroy it in turn 1 if you go first. This Death Company is brilliant. There's not much else to say about it. It's brilliant. One weakness is maybe enemies that are all embarked in transports. You got the Ancient there with Rites of War, and I think Rites of War is really a core Warlord trait that's going to add so much value to a list like this. Adding Obsec to everything within 6. Remember, this can be daisy-chained with some bigger squads. You can do so much with Rites of War. I love it. I recommend you play it now if you haven't been playing it. We then have 3 squads of Sanguinary Guard, all swords, and swords seem to be the preferred choice right now. Obviously better into Armour of Contempt units. However, if you do fight Orcs, Custodes, or maybe even Eldar, you could get a little bit of more value out of potentially those axes. So swords is fine, but maybe sometimes mixing in a few axes can be a good option. This next squad is interesting and one we haven't seen much. It's a 10-man Vanguard Veteran squad with all Lightning Claws and Chainswords, and obviously jump packs, 250 points. They can be combat squadded, and if you do combat squad them, then, you know, that gives you even more units to move across the battlefield here, which is brilliant. But with the Lightning Claws, that basically means like the Sergeant has 4 attacks, each regular guy has 3 attacks, and then, you know, Assault Doctrine and all the other Savage Echoes can kick in, and you're going to get 10 bonus attacks if you keep them as one squad with just their Chainswords. They can make all the other attacks on the Lightning Claw. Obviously, the rerolls and additional AP helps, but Chainsword attacks, 10 more bonus attacks coming out here, and I guess you're not losing that much. Like back in the day, you'd probably have to take a Storm Shield. Storm Shields are now 5 points, so you're trading up a little bit of survivability for quite a bit more offensive and quite a lot less points. So this is an interesting squad too. For first attack, we have 20 Assault Marines, a 5, a 5, and a 10. 2 of them, the first 5 and the second 10, are going to have 2 Meltaguns and 2 Infernal Pistols, and then your third one is going to have an Infernal Pistol and a couple of Plasma Pistols. So this is mixing in some of the free weapon loadouts you get now for the Assault Squads. I've seen a lot more people take Assault Squads, and I guess this is why they can pack a little bit of a punch. Slightly less attacks here, but I guess against like toughness 4 or less or 1 moon models, they're still probably going to be able to do quite a bit of damage. These guys are going to rely a lot more on getting to turn 3 and getting that additional Savage Echoes attack. And then finally, we've got one squad of heavy support. I guess these guys could hold a backfield objective or something. They have the carbine for the move, shoot, move, and they also have las fusel. So this is the list coming right in at 2,000 points. So if you look at that again, we're actually looking at 50 jump infantry, the 5 death company, the 15 sanguinary guard, the 10 vanguard vets, and the 20 assault marines, and then 15 assault intercessors as well. So a lot of bodies on the board, and it's a boatload of chainsword attacks, but a decent amount of higher damage attacks as well. 3 characters keeping Assassinate is like a potential that you can't be picked against, but you are going to give away a lot of points for no prisoners with a list like this. So if you're going to take a list like this, what is the strategy? Well, you've got the ton of jump units, we just mentioned that. You've got Wrath of Baal to maximise movement and lower all your charge distances, and your troops are equipped for killing, so it's very much an always be charging list. If you were playing against this, expect them all to be moving forward, you're going to be charged all over the board, and you have to deal with that. This list probably synergizes really well with Relentless Assault, possibly even Death from Above, potentially Retrieve Nachman data. I've listed that just down here. So with Rites of War, with this many units, and with a few units of OBSEC as well, you're probably going to be able to do pretty well on primary. I'd be surprised if you weren't able to hold 4 at least a few turns in the game, and probably hold 4 in, I guess, like a 5, and maybe even hold 4 in a 6, something like that. It's going to be a hyper-aggressive list. You know, there's so little firepower here. You're going to have a tiny little damage spike from your 4 Meltas and your couple of Infernal Pistols, I guess maybe 3 if you include Dante's. Ton of 1 damage attacks is going to benefit so much from Assault Doctrine, so having the Priest and getting the Blood Chalice up early, and also once we get to turn 3, all other units are going to do a lot more damage because they have a lot more attacks and AP. The larger reroll aura here on Dante to give both the leadership improvements and the rerolls on core, especially when the whole list is core, is going to get quite a bit of value out of Dante. I normally have problems with running Dante myself. I think in this sort of list, Dante makes a lot of sense. So what are the strengths and weaknesses? So the strength is obviously you've got a lot. Could use a better adjective there, like a F load of fast moving melee units. Everything in a jump pack is going 14 inches. We can flood sections of the board. We can overrun the opponents using that. And any section we do start to overrun, we can obsec that area away from the opponents with Rites of War. We could also go a bit weaker on one side of the board with Rites of War and maybe 1 or 2 squads of guys to just obsec that side, and then the other side of the board just try and kill the opponent. So a few ways you could play this, but it is going to be a little bit one-dimensional. What are the weaknesses? We've got no way to prevent Overwatch. We've got no way to counter psychic powers. We've got no way to prevent counter-offensive. And I mean, beyond a very high-level Angel Sacrifice play, and what I mean by that is your character is going to have to be in like engagement range of a ton or a very specific enemy model to play Angel Sacrifice. I think in practice that can actually be pretty difficult to do unless you're a very top Blood Angels player or a very top player in general. We're going to give up 14 points for no prisoners, so I would imagine most enemies are going to pick no prisoners against you because basically they're just going to have to kill you, which they're going to have to do anyway because you're in their face. They're going to score 14 points. And in some ways that does make the list a little predictable. We're potentially also weak into like transhuman, -1 enemies, -1 damage enemies, half damage enemies, or toughness 7+. We have those 4 Thunderhammers and I guess 4 Meltiguns and like 3 Infernal Pistols. Beyond that, most of our wounding on toughness 7+ is going to be 4+. So we may hit pretty well and we may have a lot of attacks, but our wounds are definitely going to, or our ability to wound is definitely going to fall away pretty heavily. So how would I score a list like this? And bear in mind, this came 4th at GT. The final game, I guess, where he played 3rd, which was Drakari, he lost a very close game. So this could have easily come 3rd at a GT. So scoring in terms of overall looking at it, I would say it's about a 9 out of 10 for OBSEC. You know, you've got the 3 troop choices, but Rites of War adds so much value. Rites of War used with a few squads of Sanguinary Guard or even any really Blood Angels core units is going to help you win the primary game. You know, you're going to be able to outscore your opponent in primary. Against hordes, this list is going to do very well. There's so many chainsword attacks. We've got those lightning claw attacks. I guess we even have like some sanguinary Angelus bolters, and I mean, Sanguinary Guard can chop up hordes as well if they must need to. Against monsters or vehicles, we're going to rely pretty heavily on those few weapons, and it's just borderline there, like 4 melta guns, 3 infernal pistols, 4 thunder hammers. I used to say you need 10 3 or more damage weapons on a list. This has 11, and since I used to say 10, I feel like now it's more like 15 you need. So if the enemy can screen you pretty effectively, and you've only got like those essentially 11 3 or more damage weapons, I'm going to rate this down a little bit for anti-monster. It's really going to come down to opponent placement and how good the opponent is, but in some situations this could definitely be a problem. For mobility, I think we're going to have to go 10 out of 10. The only way this could have been more mobile, I guess, is if your troops were like in cursors, because obviously you get the forward deployment and you could redeploy some of them. But for the most part, 50 jump units with Wrath of Baal is pretty much arguably the most mobile list of Blood Angels could be. So we're going to say 10 out of 10. It could have been 9.5. And then specialization, we're going to say 7 out of 10. It isn't always be charging list, which potentially leaves it a little bit one-dimensional and weak against some enemies. Obviously, like I feel like this would be very weak against Drukhari if it was a transport list, but the guy he played, the Drukhari player he just lost to, didn't actually have any transports. But I mean, that's neither here nor there. I guess, like, I do think sometimes if you go this always be charging list, you can become unstuck into certain enemies. And one of the ways you could become unstuck, but let's first say he did 44 out of 50 points, which is very respectable. One of the first ways you could become unstuck is you've got no way to prevent Overwatch or counter-offensive, which a Whirlwind does, because you can prevent Overwatch for 1 CP, and you can also prevent counter-offensive by suppressing the unit that you plan to fight second. So you're going to charge 2 units of Sangre Garden, you know you're going to fight with the one on the right first, so the opponent is 100% going to pay 2 CP to interrupt on the left of the battlefield. And when he interrupts, he's going to kill some of your Sangre Guard. So you know that's going to happen. So you counter-offensive that unit on the left. So once you fight on the right, you can fight on the left and you can't pay to interrupt. That's the strength of the Whirlwind. And I like it so much. I find it very hard to drop if you're going on a melee-centric list. Soul Warden is another one that this is missing. So we do have the Sangre Priest to give us a 6-up shrug, but I feel like there's so many armories, there's so many powers now throwing out like 6 mortal wounds. I mean, we're about to be hit with the Squats, who have a friggin' relic weapon that every 6 on the wound roll is D3 plus 3 mortal wounds. So I think Soul Warden is one of the best anti-mortal wound prevention powers that essentially any army has. Blood Angels, especially because it doesn't require core or anything, it's just Blood Angels used within 6. So I like Soul Warden a lot, and if I could find a way to add it to this list, I probably would. And then I also mentioned I love Incursors. I think the flexibility of them, especially if you're trying to do some secondaries and stuff, and the forward deploy, redeploy, and their survivability in that you can smoke screen and transhuman them, so you can make them very, very survivable. I love Incursors. So that's a few little tweaks that, if this was me, that's probably what I would try and change. But regardless, this is an always be charging list. And I think if you make too many changes, you probably impact the style of it. So I wanted to say congrats to Cory for a great finish. It's always good to hear about Blood Angels players doing well. I know how hard it is now to finish top 4 of a GT, in that I finished 5th in, I think, 2 of my last attempts. So let me know in the comments below, is this sort of list that you would run? Do you like it? Is there anything that you would change, or is there anything that I missed that you think you could optimize this list with? And I did promise at the end of the video we're going to talk about a bonus army list, so that's what we're going to jump into now. So today's bonus list for the end, we're going to look at Stephen Box's LGT, that's the London Grand Tournament 2022. He went 4 wins and 1 loss and finished 55th out of 723, which is actually a brilliant placing, considering Blood Angel is currently being rated about B tier in terms of overall armies, and Space Marines do not have a good win rate. So let's have a look at the list, let's compare it to Cory's 4th place GT finish and see if we can see any similarities or anything that will help us win future games of 40k. Alright, so this is also 2,000 points, it's also starting on 3 CP. He has an Agent of Imperium, and that is Inquisitor Cotiez for 95 points. I think the reason to pick Cotiez is probably for Psychic Interrogation, which when we looked at the spreadsheet that I made like last week, and if you haven't seen that video or you haven't seen the spreadsheet, then please check it out. I'm going to put a link in the video to the video up above. And that spreadsheet basically breaks down like how many points every Blood Angels list is scoring at secondaries across tournament play. So I think that the idea behind Cotiez would probably be to do some psychic actions and kind of try and make scoring secondaries a little bit easier. We'd have Dante, who's going to cost nothing, and he's going to actually add 1 CP because he is the Warlord. Interestingly, he hasn't picked Heroic Bearing, which is something that Stephen used quite a lot previously. We have a Death Company captain who's running Selfless Valor. That's going to give him that 6-inch potential heroic intervention. He's also got an Infernal Pistol, he's got a Jump Pack, he's got a Relic Blade, and he's Hero of the Chapter with Armor Indomitus. So we've basically given him +1 wound and a 3-up invulnerable save when we need it. And I think the main reason to do that on a Death Company captain like this is because you're going to Angel Sacrifice him. You're going to be able to heroically intervene 6, and then potentially Angel Sacrifice, and then Armor Indomitus, the 3-up invulnerable, to try and survive through it. And you also have a 6-up Feel No Pain, and then you can also press 1 CP to make it a 5-up with Refusal to Die. We then have a Sanguinary Priest who is just bare bones, coming in at 120 points. And I like the bare bones Sanguinary Priest. I think Assault Doctrine early for Blood Angels lists is super important. I do think he could be a really good Rites of War carrier though, because I think after he's done his job of like 2 turns of getting you guys into Assault Doctrine, he's kind of throwaway. So if you want to just jump him on his own onto an objective to obsec it away from the enemy, yes, he might die, but he might also like flip 8 points in your favour. I think it's not a bad choice. Right, troops. We've got basically 1 squad of Assault Intercessors, we've got 1 squad of Incursors, and we've got 1 squad of Infiltrators. So Infiltrators basically to screen backfield, Incursors potentially forward deploy, Intercessors will carve things up with chainswords. For elites, we've got 3 squads of Death Company, and 2 of these squads are the 4 Thunderhammer ones that we were used to with 1 chainsword, and the third squad, is 4 Power Fists and a Power Sword. And I don't dislike that too much, but I think what's interesting, and this is me because I've been playing Death Company a lot, is I would be running 4 Power Swords and 4 Infernal Pistols. I think that is another very versatile squad, and I think in some ways I actually prefer it to this 4 Power Fist option. But I guess we could math that out. They're basically going to end up being the same cost. The Infernal Pistols maybe, just maybe, might help when you're fighting those armies that have lots of transports. We then have our Sanguinary Ancient, who has Rites of War. So, I mean, I guess this makes up for the no priest Rites of War, and he's running Wrath of Baal. So, very useful Sanguinary Ancient. Again, another character that can potentially Angel Sacrifice. We've got the Sanguinary Guard with 6 swords, 180 points. We've got another Sangard with 6 swords, the same. We've a cheap Assault Squad, similar to the last one. However, the Sergeant's running a couple of Lightning Claws. We do have those couple of free Plasma Pistols in there. And then this time we have the Whirlwind, because the one weakness that I said, Overwatch and turning off counteroffensive, the Whirlwind gives you that strength. So basically 4 units of Death Company, meaning Fury of the Lost is an option. The Psyker, potentially meaning Psychic Interrogation is an option. And then we all know about Relentless Assault anyway. So I think that this is a list built a little bit more around secondaries. And I mean, who am I to critique this list? Stephen's been the best Blood Angels player, I believe, in the world for a while. But I did want to look at it and see what overlaps. And I think it has a bit of overlap with Cory's. Dante and the Sanguinary Priest and the Thunderhammer Death Company and the multiple Sanguinary Guard and the Sanguinary Ancient, which I've not been running for a little while. I still do like the Sanguinary Ancient. I do think he's a strong unit. He's a great Rites of War carrier. Like I said, the Priest can do that too. But yeah, if you like this list more or less, you could also leave a comment down below. Tell me what you like. Is there something that I've missed in this list that makes it stand out for you? And have you tried 5 Death Company with 5 Infernal Pistols and 5 Power Swords? Because I've recently been running a squad with 3 Infernal Pistols and 5 Power Swords, and I thought it was a legitly good squad. I feel like I want to actually try 5 and 5, because other people with Chapter Master rerolls, it feels like once you've made like a really far turn 1 move with Forlorn Fury, it always feels like 1 or 2 of those Infernal Pistols sneak through. And when Infernal Pistols sneak through at short range, that's a lot of damage on top of basically like 25 minus 4 Power Swords coming in. So leave me a comment and let's talk about these lists. And I guess the one last thing to say is these melee lists, while they do perform, I think, really well in the hands of the right players, we're still not seeing them win events. They're doing well, but they're not winning events. So with the balanced data slate basically coming out next week, like, what do Blood Angels need to win events? Like, we need something, right? Because it seems like I don't think we've won an event since Armor of Contempt came out. Or maybe we won like some smaller RTTs, and maybe there's a GT win that I don't know about. But I do typically get all the information passed to me by the channel members. So yeah, let me know your comments down below and let's talk about it. So thank you so much for watching to the end of the video. If you want to support the channel, then please look at the links in the video description. There's a few in there. If you order models in the UK from Element Games, we have a referral code. If you'd like to support us on Patreon for as little as $2.50 a month, which is arguably like less than the price of a cup of coffee, or if you want to become a channel member, I do really appreciate it. Everybody that supports me is very much appreciated. Thank you so much for sticking to the end. And I hope to catch you in a future video. If you like what you saw today, either please hit the like button or subscribe. By the blood are we made strong, brothers. Peace.